That morning, my youngest son, a cruise ship captain, called me. "Dad, is my sister-in-law home? I just saw her board my ship. I checked her passport myself. It's definitely her." I froze. Upstairs, I heard the shower running, then footsteps. My daughter-in-law appeared at the top of the stairs, hair wet, smiling down at me. My heart stopped. If my daughter-in-law was standing right here, then who did my son just see on that ship? "Hello, thank you for being here." If that opening gave you chills, the truth is darker. Like, subscribe and comment where you're from. Take care of your health wherever you are. Note: this is a fictional story, not real events, but the lessons learned are deeply meaningful. Any similarities are coincidental. Let's uncover what happened. My younger son called me that morning while I stood at the kitchen sink, hands deep in soapy water, watching the November sun paint gold across the harbor. I remember thinking how Margaret would have loved a morning like this: crisp air, clear skies, the kind of day that makes you grateful to be alive in Annapolis. But Margaret had been gone for 12 years, and I'd learned to carry gratitude and grief in the same breath. "Dad." Cameron's voice came through the phone speaker, tinny but urgent, and he always called me Dad, never Pop or Father, just Dad, steady and sure, the way he'd captained ships since he was 24. I wiped my hands on the dish towel, the blue one with little sailboats that Noah had picked out last Christmas. My grandson had good taste for a 7-year-old. "Cameron, aren't you supposed to be halfway to Nassau by now?" "We're docked in Miami for crew rotation," he said. There was something in his voice, a hesitation I didn't recognize. Cameron didn't hesitate. He made decisions in storms that would have paralyzed most men. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to stay calm." I set down the coffee mug I'd been washing, Michael's favorite, the one that said, "World's okayest son, a Father's Day gag gift from 3 years back." My oldest boy had a sense of humor, dry as Chesapeake Bay sand. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong exactly. It's just—" Cameron exhaled long and slow. "Dad, is Vanessa home right now?" I glanced at the ceiling toward the second floor where I'd heard the shower running 20 minutes ago. My daughter-in-law had moved in with us 6 months after Michael's promotion to IT director at Chesapeake Digital Systems, said she wanted to help with Noah while Michael traveled for client meetings. Sweet gesture, I'd thought. "She's upstairs," I said. "Taking a shower. Why silence? Not the comfortable kind we sometimes shared on Sunday phone calls, but the heavy kind, loaded with unspoken words." "Cameron." "Dad, that's not possible." His voice dropped lower, nearly a whisper. "I'm looking at Vanessa right now. She's on my ship." The dish towel slipped from my hand. "What are you talking about? MS Ocean Majesty, Dad. I saw her passport myself when she boarded yesterday at Port of Miami boarding gate C. I processed her check-in personally, suite 1204 premium deck. I thought it was weird she didn't mention visiting, but I figured maybe she wanted to surprise Michael for your anniversary or something." He paused. 20 minutes ago, I saw her on the promenade deck, level 7. She was wearing a white sundress, talking to some man I didn't recognize. I called out to her, but she didn't hear me, too much wind. But Dad, I'm certain that was Vanessa. My heart did something strange, a skip, then a double beat that reminded me I was 68 and hadn't seen a cardiologist in 2 years. "Cameron, that's impossible. I heard her this morning. She made breakfast for Noah before school drove him to Annapolis Elementary. I watched her car pull out of the driveway. Then who did I see? Upstairs, the water shut off. The old pipes groaned the way they always did, a sound I'd been meaning to fix since Carter was president, but never got around to. "Oh, hold on," I said. I left the phone on the counter speaker still on and walked to the staircase. Michael had been in Arlington all week, some massive database migration project for a Northern Virginia client that had him working 12-hour days. He'd left Monday morning with his laptop bag and a promise to be back by Thursday night, maybe Friday, if things went south. Which meant it was just me, Noah, and whoever this woman was in the house. "Oh, it's Vanessa," I called up the stairs. No answer. I climbed slowly, one hand on the banister. My knees weren't what they used to be. Too many years crewing sailboats in the Naval Academy basin. Too many Saturdays coaching youth soccer when the boys were small. The second-floor hallway smelled like lavender soap, Vanessa's favorite. The bathroom door stood slightly ajar, steam curling out like morning fog over the water. "Vanessa, you okay up there?" A shadow moved behind the frosted glass shower door. Then it opened. A woman stepped out wrapped in a white towel, dark hair dripping onto bare shoulders. She looked exactly like Vanessa, same heart-shaped face, same brown eyes, same small mole on her left collarbone. But something was off. The way she held herself, maybe. Stiffer, more cautious. "Harold." The voice came from behind me. I spun around. Vanessa, or another woman who looked exactly like her, stood at the top of the stairs, fully dressed in jeans, and a burgundy sweater car keys dangling from her hand. Her hair was dry-styled. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Did you need something? I was just heading to the farmer's market." I looked from her to the woman in the towel. Back to her. My brain stuttered, trying to make sense of geometry that didn't work. From the kitchen downstairs, Cameron's voice drifted up small and distant through the phone speaker. "Dad, you still there?" The woman in the towel clutched the fabric tighter. The woman on the stairs took a step forward. They were identical. Not similar, identical. Same height, same build, same faint scar on the right eyebrow from a childhood accident Vanessa had once mentioned. My mouth opened, closed. No words came. I stood there in the hallway, phone still on the counter downstairs, Cameron's voice a distant buzz, and stared at two women who wore my daughter-in-law's face. How could she be in two places at once? I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards upstairs sounded like footsteps I couldn't trust. By dawn, I'd made a decision I wouldn't confront her, not yet. Margaret used to say, "Trust your eyes, Harold, but verify your heart." So I watched. Tuesday morning, 3 days after Cameron's call, I came downstairs to find the kitchen spotless. Counters gleamed. Breakfast dishes already washed, dried, and put away. The faint scent of lemon cleaner hung in the air. Vanessa stood at the stove humming while she flipped pancakes. Her shoulders were relaxed, a slight smile on her face. I stood there with my coffee mug trying to remember the last time I'd seen her like this. The answer was simple, never. My real daughter-in-law didn't clean. Not with any regularity. Michael had complained about it once last summer after a few beers at a backyard barbecue. "Dad, I love her, but she leaves dishes in the sink for 3 days." He'd laughed it off. I'd kept my mouth shut, it wasn't my business. But this woman humming cheerfully while she cooked was different. "Morning, Harold." She glanced over my shoulder. "Pancakes I made extra." I sat down watching her move. Everything about her seemed lighter. Less burdened. Noah thundered downstairs and grabbed a pancake with his bare hands. "These are good, Mom." She ruffled his hair. "Glad you like them, sweetie." After they left for school, I walked back into the kitchen. The sink was empty. Spotless. I opened the dishwasher. Also empty, she'd hand-washed everything. I pulled out my phone and found an old photo from Michael's 40th birthday in August. In the background, through the kitchen doorway, our sink was stacked high with dishes, crusted pans, glasses with dried juice at the bottom. Vanessa had been living here 2 months by then. I set the phone down uneasy. The next afternoon, Wednesday, our neighbor Diane Morrison knocked on the door around 3. She swept into the kitchen carrying a glass bowl covered with plastic wrap. "Harold, I was at the city dock this morning. and they had fresh shrimp right off the boats. Made you my shrimp salad, you know, the one with the Old Bay and celery that Margaret always liked. My chest tightened at the mention of my wife, but I managed to smile. Diane, you didn't have to. Nonsense. She set the bowl on the counter. Where's Vanessa? I'll say hello. Right here. The voice came from the hallway. Vanessa appeared in jeans and a loose sweater, hair pulled back. She smiled at Diane, that pleasant smile I was starting to recognize. Diane, how sweet of you. Chaque just being neighborly. Diane pulled off the plastic wrap. Fresh Chesapeake Bay shrimp. Don't let it sit too long, tastes best today. The smell hit me immediately, that briny sweetness mixed with mayonnaise and seasoning. It looks delicious, Vanessa said. We'll try some. Diane grabbed a sleeve of crackers from my pantry and set them out. Harold, get some plates. I moved on autopilot, pulling down 3 small plates while Diane scooped generous portions of the pink, chunky salad. She handed one to Vanessa, one to me, then took her own and settled into a chair at the kitchen table. Go on, Diane urged. Tell me what you think. Vanessa picked up a cracker, scooped up some of the shrimp salad, and brought it to her mouth. My hand froze on my own plate. She chewed, swallowed, smiled. Oh, Diane, this is wonderful. Is that dill I taste? Just a pinch. Diane beamed. And a little lemon juice, my mother's recipe. Vanessa took another cracker, another bite, then another. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Last 4th of July. Joseph Novak's bakery parking lot. Kids running around with sparklers, American flags everywhere. Someone had brought a platter of crab cakes, fresh blue crab from the bay. Vanessa had taken one bite, just one. Within 3 minutes, her face had started to swell. Her throat had closed up so fast that Michael had to jam the EpiPen into her thigh right there while I called 911. We'd spent hours at Anne Arundel Medical Center while they monitored her breathing, pumped her full of medication. The doctor had been clear, severe shellfish allergy. Any exposure to shrimp, crab, or lobster could trigger anaphylaxis. She needs to avoid it completely. But now, this woman sat at my kitchen table eating shrimp salad with Diane Morrison, chatting about recipes like it was the most natural thing in the world. No swelling, no hives, no frantic reaching for medication. Nothing. Harold, Diane's voice broke through. You haven't touched yours. Is something wrong? No, I cleared my throat. Just remembering something. It's wonderful, Diane. Thank you. She stayed another 20 minutes chatting about the Maritime Festival coming up in December. Vanessa laughed at all the right moments, asked thoughtful questions, played the part perfectly. When Diane finally left, I stood at the kitchen counter staring at the bowl of shrimp salad. My hands were shaking. That evening, Noah came down for dinner in his Orioles jersey. He looked at Vanessa and tilted his head. Grandpa. Yeah, buddy. How come Mom is so happy now? Vanessa's hand slipped. A fork clattered onto the table. What do you mean, champ? Noah scrunched up his face. She's been singing a lot, and she smells different, like Grandpa's soap instead of the purple flowers. Lavender, I said quietly. Your mom used to wear lavender perfume. Vanessa laughed too quickly. I ran out, sweetheart. I'll pick up more this weekend. Noah nodded, satisfied. Michael finally came home around 9 that night. I heard his car pull into the driveway, the engine cutting off the heavy sigh of a man who'd spent 10 hours staring at computer screens. He walked into the kitchen, tie-loosened sleeves, rolled-up eyes, red-rimmed. Hey, Dad. Long day. The longest. He grabbed a beer from the fridge and twisted off the cap. Found 3 more bugs in the deployment. I'll be back up in Arlington tomorrow. Probably won't be home until Friday, maybe later. He leaned over and kissed the top of Vanessa's head. She'd been sitting at the table, flipping through a magazine. Don't wait up for me tomorrow night, okay? Okay, she said softly. He drained half the beer, mumbled something about needing a shower, and trudged upstairs. He was too exhausted to notice anything was different, too buried in code and client deadlines to see what was happening in his own house. That night, I sat in my study with the door locked, pulled out the leather notebook Margaret had given me 30 years ago. I clicked open my pen. Day 1, Tuesday, November 7th, kitchen spotless. Humming while cooking. VR never cleans. Michael complained she leaves dishes for days. This woman washed everything immediately. Too cheerful. Wrong. Day 2. Wednesday, November 8th, Diane Morrison brought shrimp salad, homemade fresh bay shrimp. Vanessa ate it in front of us, crackers, multiple servings. No reaction. VR is severely allergic, 4th of July, EpiPen ER. Nearly lost her. This woman ate shrimp like nothing. Day 3, Thursday, November 9th. Noah noticed, Mom is so happy now. Also smell change, lavender gone, generic soap instead. She startled when he mentioned it. Michael came home 9 p.m. exhausted, leaving for Arlington again tomorrow. Oblivious, I pressed down hard, ink bleeding through. Day 3. She's not my daughter-in-law. But who is she? Thursday morning, I tested her. Vanessa. I called from the kitchen table where I sat with my coffee and the Capital Gazette spread out in front of me. She was at the counter slicing strawberries for Noah's lunchbox. Do you remember where we had Noah's 5th birthday party? She paused, knife hovering over the cutting board. Here at the house, wasn't it? No. I kept my voice light. We had it at Quiet Waters Park. Michael rented the pavilion by the playground. It rained halfway through and all the kids had to run under the shelter. You made that chocolate cake shaped like a baseball glove. She laughed, but it sounded uncertain. Oh, right. I must have been thinking of a different year. There was no different year. Noah had only had 5 birthdays since Vanessa joined this family, and I remembered every single one. I folded the newspaper. I'm heading out for a bit. Need anything from town? No, I'm good. Thanks, Harold. I grabbed my jacket and left before she could ask where I was going. Main Street Bakery sat 3 blocks from the house, a narrow brick storefront with a hand-painted sign and the smell of yeast and sugar drifting out every time the door opened. Joseph Novak had run it for 20 years, a solid, no-nonsense guy with flour permanently dusted on his forearms. The bell chimed when I walked in. Joseph looked up from behind the counter and broke into a smile. Harold, let me guess, 2 croissants and a cinnamon raisin bagel. You know me too well. I leaned against the counter while he pulled out a paper bag. Hey, Joseph, can I ask you something? Sure thing. He started loading the bag. Have you noticed anything different about Vanessa lately? His hands slowed. He glanced toward the back of the shop, where his assistant was pulling a tray of muffins from the oven, then lowered his voice. You know I have, actually. He sealed the bag and pushed it across the counter. She used to come in every Saturday morning like clockwork. Always ordered 2 cinnamon rolls, said they were Michael's favorite. She'd chat about Noah's soccer games, ask about my daughter at community college. Real friendly. And now, started maybe 6 months ago. She still comes in, but it's different. Doesn't make eye contact. Orders whatever's closest to the register. Last week she walked right past me without saying hello, like she didn't recognize me. He shrugged. I figured maybe she and Michael were having problems. What about her husband? I asked. Has Michael noticed any of this? Joseph shrugged, wiping down the counter. Michael Harold, I see that boy maybe once a week if I'm lucky. He's always traveling Arlington, Baltimore, somewhere up north for that tech company. Works himself half to death. He shook his head. Poor guy's probably too tired to notice much when he is home. You know how it is with these IT jobs. I did. And Joseph was right. 6 months. The same timeline Cameron had mentioned when she'd started seeming distant, distracted. Thanks, Joseph. I paid for the bag and left. The Annapolis Farmers Market sprawled across the parking lot behind the Pip Moyer Recreation Center every Saturday, but on weekdays, a handful of permanent vendors set up smaller stands. I found Joyce Lawson at her usual spot near the entrance, arranging heirloom tomatoes in neat pyramids. Morning, Joyce. Harold. She straightened up, wiping her hands on her apron. Haven't seen you in a while. How's that grandson of yours? Growing like a weed. I picked up a tomato, turned it over in my hand. Joyce, I wanted to ask, have you noticed anything odd about Vanessa? Her smile faded. Funny you should mention that. Why? She came by last week. I called out to her, "Good morning, Vanessa." And she just stared at me. Blank face, like she had no idea who I was. Finally, she smiled and said, "Oh, hi, real quiet," and grabbed the first bag of snap peas she saw without even checking if they were fresh. Joyce shook her head. Vanessa always used to spend 10 minutes picking through the tomatoes, asking about the heirlooms. She knew her produce. But last week, different person. How long has she been acting like this? 6 months, maybe little things at first. Forgetting our conversations from the week before. Then she stopped coming as often. When she does show up, she's in and out in 5 minutes. I bought a bag of apples I didn't need and walked home slowly, mind churning. Diane Morrison was sitting on my front porch. When I got back, a Tupperware container balanced on her lap. Harold, I brought you some of that apple crisp I promised. She stood up, smoothing her cardigan. Is Vanessa home? I wanted to say hello. She's inside. I unlocked the door and let her in. Diane, can I ask you something? Of course. You mentioned yesterday that Vanessa seems different. Can you elaborate? Diane set the container on the counter and turned to face me, her expression thoughtful. She's kinder now, actually. More attentive, but... She hesitated. Last week I mentioned Margaret's favorite flowers, those purple irises she used to plant every spring along the fence. Vanessa looked at me like I was speaking another language. Had to remind her what they were called. Diane's brow furrowed. Margaret talked about those flowers all the time, Harold. Vanessa should have remembered. Does Michael see much of her these days? I asked carefully. Diane pursed her lips. Not really. He's gone so often, 3-4 days a week. When he is home, he's exhausted. I saw him last Saturday morning getting into his car with his laptop. Even works on weekends now. She sighed. That promotion's been hard on him. I nodded slowly. It had been. My chest tightened. Thanks, Diane. After she left, I climbed the stairs to the second floor. Walked past Noah's room, superhero posters on the walls, Lego sets scattered across the floor, and stopped at the door to my bedroom. Margaret's jewelry box sat on my dresser, where it had been for 12 years. Dark cherry wood brass hinges a tiny key I kept in the drawer beneath it. I'd opened it maybe twice since she passed, once to let Vanessa borrow a bracelet for a wedding, once to show Noah a picture of his grandmother wearing her pearls. I unlocked it now. Lifted the lid. The top tray was empty except for a pair of cheap earrings Margaret had bought at a craft fair decades ago. I lifted the tray out. The bottom compartment was empty too. My hands started shaking. Margaret's engagement ring, 1.5 carat diamond, set in white gold, the ring I'd saved for 6 months to buy, when I was 23 gone. The Akoya pearl necklace I'd given her for our 25th anniversary, 18 inches of perfectly matched pearls that had cost me a month's salary gone. The Omega Seamaster watch that had belonged to my grandfather, solid gold, engraved with his initials on the back gone. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the empty box in my hands. The ring alone was worth $15,000. The necklace, $25,000. The watch at least $12,000, maybe more to a collector. I thought of the small diamond watch Margaret used to wear on special occasions, the one with the sapphires around the face her mother had given her. I checked the drawer where she'd kept it. Also gone. $65,000. Maybe more. All of it gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty velvet lining, trying to remember the last time I'd seen any of it. There had been a family photo last Christmas. Michael had insisted on getting everyone together for a portrait. Had Vanessa been wearing the pearls, then I couldn't remember. Couldn't think straight. Downstairs, I heard the front door open. Vanessa's voice calling up, "Harold, I'm taking Noah to his soccer practice. We'll be back around 5. The door closed again, car engine starting, pulling away. I looked down at the empty box in my trembling hands. She's stealing from us. But why and who is helping her? I needed advice. Or maybe I just needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. That afternoon, I drove down to City Dock Coffee, a small place right on the waterfront, with outdoor tables that looked out over the harbor. Sailboats bobbed at their moorings. Tourists wandered past with ice cream cones. It was the kind of peaceful scene that felt completely at odds with the chaos in my head. Vernon Nash was already there, sitting at our usual table with a mug of black coffee and the day's crossword half finished. He looked up when I approached and immediately set down his pen. "You look terrible," he said. "Thanks." I dropped into the chair across from him. Vernon and I had known each other for 40 years, met when we were both young fathers, coaching Little League, stayed friends through careers and kids and Margaret's funeral. He'd been a structural engineer before he retired, the kind of guy who approached every problem with logic and patience. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was him. "What's going on, Harold?" I took a breath and started talking. Told him about Cameron's call from the cruise ship Vanessa in 2 places at once. Told him about the kitchen cleaning, the humming, the way she ate Diane's shrimp salad without a single allergic reaction. Told him about Joseph and Joyce and how they'd both noticed the changes 6 months ago. Told him about the jewelry box, empty, $65,000 worth of Margaret's things just gone. Vernon listened without interrupting his engineer's mind, taking it all in processing. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward. "You think someone's impersonating her?" "I know it sounds crazy. It doesn't sound crazy." He took a sip of his coffee. "It sounds like you've been paying attention. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know. That's why I'm here." "And your son doesn't see any of this?" Vernon asked. "Michael's barely home." I ran a hand over my face. "He got promoted to CTO 6 months ago, same time this all started. He's in Arlington 3-4 days a week, Northern Virginia clients' database projects. When he is home, he comes in at 9 or 10 at night, eats dinner standing up, and falls asleep in front of his laptop. So whoever this is, this twin, she only shows up when Michael's gone." "Exactly." The pieces were starting to fit together. "She's been careful, planned it that way." Vernon tapped his fingers on the table, thinking. "You need proof, Harold. Not just suspicions, something concrete." "Like what?" "Follow her." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Next time she leaves the house, see where she goes, who she meets. If someone's helping her pull this off, and they'd have to be right, then she'll lead you to them eventually." I thought about that. Thought about sitting in my car, trailing behind her like some private investigator in a bad movie. Trust your gut, Vernon added. You've known something was wrong for days now. If Margaret were here, she'd tell you the same thing. He was right. Margaret had always trusted her instincts, had taught me to trust mine. Okay, I said. I'll do it. Vernon reached across the table and gripped my shoulder. Call me if you need backup. The next afternoon, Friday, I put the plan into action. Michael had left for work early, some crisis with a client database. Noah was at school until 3. Around 1 o'clock, I heard Vanessa's car keys jingle in the hallway. I was in my study door, cracked open just enough to see. She called up the stairs. Harold, I'm running some errands, back in a couple hours, and then the front door closed. I grabbed my own keys and jacket, moving quickly but quietly. By the time I got to my car, a 10-year-old Honda Accord that blended into traffic better than Michael's flashy Audi, she was already pulling away from the curb. I followed. She drove east through downtown Annapolis, past the State House with its white dome gleaming in the afternoon sun, past the Naval Academy gates, where midshipmen in their uniforms walked in tight formations. Traffic was light. I stayed 3 cars back the way I'd seen it done in movies. She crossed the Spa Creek Bridge, a short span that connected central Annapolis to the Eastport neighborhood on the far side. I'd lived in this city my whole life and knew the area well enough. Eastport was older, more working class. Narrow streets lined with modest houses, some kept up nicely, others showing their age. 3 miles from our house on Prince George Street, she turned onto Clay Street and slowed down. I hung back, pulling over near the corner and killing the engine. Watched as she parked in front of a small house halfway down the block. Number 89. It was a single-story wooden structure, painted a faded blue-gray, that might have looked charming once, but now just looked tired. The front porch sagged slightly. Faded curtains hung in the windows. A pot of chrysanthemums sat by the door, brown and wilted like no one had watered them in weeks. Not the kind of place you'd expect to find someone stealing $65,000 in jewelry. Vanessa got out of her car, glanced up and down the street. I ducked lower in my seat and walked up to the front door. She didn't knock, just opened it and went inside like she lived there. I sat in my car, engine off, heart pounding. What the hell was this place? I checked my watch. Waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. At the 20-minute mark, I couldn't stand it anymore. I got out of the car and walked slowly down the sidewalk, trying to look casual. Just an old man out for a stroll. When I reached number 89, I paused, pretending to tie my shoe, and glanced toward the window. The curtain shifted slightly, and I saw them. 2 women, standing side by side in what looked like a small living room. They were identical. Same height, same build, same dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, same posture. One wore jeans and a gray sweater, the outfit Vanessa had left the house in. The other wore a loose cardigan over a simple dress. They were talking, gesturing. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their faces were animated, familiar, and completely, impossibly the same. I stared frozen on the sidewalk, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Twins. Dear God, they're twins. When I got home that evening, my hands were still shaking. I went straight to my study, closed the door, and sat in the dark for 20 minutes, trying to process what I'd seen. Twins. Vanessa had a twin sister, and they'd been switching places. For how long? 6 months longer. I turned on the desk lamp and pulled open the filing cabinet where Michael kept copies of household paperwork, bank statements, insurance documents, utility bills. He'd left them here for safekeeping after Vanessa moved in, said she had a habit of misplacing things. I spread the last 6 months of bank statements across my desk. At first, everything looked normal. Mortgage payment, electric bill, Michael's car insurance. But then I started noticing patterns. Cash withdrawals, large ones. $1,500 here. $2,000 there. Always from Vanessa's account, the joint one she shared with Michael. Over the past 6 months, nearly $4,000 a month had been draining out in irregular chunks. I made notes, added up the totals. $27,000 gone. Then I found the letter. It had been misfiled, stuck between 2 old credit card statements. The envelope was addressed to Michael at our Prince George Street address, but it had been opened probably by Vanessa and shoved into the stack of papers. I pulled out the letter and read it twice, my pulse climbing with each word. Dear Mr. Mitchell, congratulations. Your personal loan application for $150,000 has been approved. Please review the attached repayment schedule and sign the enclosed documents. $150,000. Michael hadn't mentioned taking out a loan, and with the promotion to CTO, his salary was solid. There was no reason he'd need to borrow that kind of money, unless he hadn't taken it out at all. I dug through Michael's old tax returns. He'd signed them here at the kitchen table last April, and I'd witnessed his signature. I laid the loan documents next to the tax return and compared. The signatures didn't match. Michael's real signature had a distinctive loop in the M, a sharp angle on the final stroke. The signature on the loan paperwork was close, but the M was rounder, the angle softer. Someone had practiced it, gotten it mostly right, but not quite perfect. Forged. I sat back in my chair, the letter trembling in my hands. She didn't just steal jewelry. She's stealing his identity. 3 days later, Monday afternoon, I drove back to Eastport. I'd spent the weekend wrestling with what to do. Confront Vanessa directly. Call the police. Tell Michael. Every option felt wrong, incomplete. I needed more information. Needed to understand what I was dealing with before I blew up my son's life. So I went back to 89 Clay Street. The house looked the same, faded blue-gray paint, sagging porch, those dead chrysanthemums still sitting by the door. I parked across the street, took a breath, and walked up to the front door. Knocked. Footsteps inside. The door opened a crack, and a woman's face appeared. The same face I'd been looking at for the past 10 months, but different somehow. Softer. More uncertain. She was wearing an old gray cardigan frayed at the cuffs. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Can I help you? Her voice was quieter than Vanessa's, more tentative. My name is Harold Mitchell, I said. I'm Michael's father. I know about you and Vanessa. Her face went white. I don't... Please, I said. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to understand what's happening. She hesitated, then stepped back and opened the door wider. You should come in. The living room was small and cluttered but clean. A worn couch, a coffee table stacked with library books, a shelf full of medical textbooks. Everything looked second-hand, well used. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands twisted in her lap. How did you find me? I followed her, I said simply. Saw you both through the window. You're twins. She nodded, tears already forming in her eyes. Yes. What's your name? Olivia? Olivia Caldwell. And Vanessa is your sister. My twin sister. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I didn't know she was lying to you, to anyone. She told me she just needed some time away, some freedom. She said her husband worked all the time and she felt trapped. When do you replace her? I asked. How often? Olivia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Only when her husband is traveling. Vanessa calls me the night before, tells me Michael will be gone for 2 or 3 days, and she needs me to stay at the house. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I usually arrive early in the morning after Michael leaves for the airport. I stay with you and Noah make meals, help with homework. Then the night before Michael comes home, Vanessa texts me and I leave. She's always back before he walks through the door. So Michael's never seen you? Never. Vanessa was very careful about that. She made sure our schedules never overlapped. Olivia looked down at her hands. I didn't think it was wrong. I thought I was just giving her a break, some time to herself. She was with another man, I said quietly. Olivia's face crumpled. I didn't know. How much is she paying you? Olivia looked down at her hands. $1,200 each time. Each time you pretend to be her. Yes. A door opened somewhere in the back of the house, and another woman appeared, younger, maybe late 20s, carrying a mug of tea. She froze when she saw me. Olivia, what's going on? Who is this? Laura, this is... Olivia's voice broke. This is Harold Mitchell, Michael's father. Laura set down the mug carefully, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding. You're the father-in-law? I am. Laura looked at Olivia, then back at me. She sat down next to Olivia and took her hand. I'm Laura Griffin, she said. Olivia's roommate. And before you judge her too harshly, you should know she's not doing this because she wants to. She's doing it because she has to. Laura. Olivia started, but Laura shook her head. He deserves to know. Laura turned to me. Olivia's foster parents are seriously ill. Her father has severe complications from years working in a factory. His lungs are failing. Her mother has chronic conditions that require constant care. The medical bills are $5,800 a month. Olivia dropped out of college 10 years ago to take care of them. She works part-time as a bookkeeper, but it's not enough. She's drowning. I looked at Olivia. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I thought Vanessa just needed a break, she whispered. A few hours away from family obligations. She said she'd pay me well, and I was desperate. My parents are all I have. I can't let them suffer. And Michael, Laura asked me, does he know? No. I shook my head. He's been traveling constantly for work. Vanessa made sure he was never home when Olivia was there. Laura's expression darkened. Then she planned this. All of it. Yes, I said. She did. Does Vanessa know about the loan? I asked quietly. The $150,000 she took out in my son's name. Olivia's head snapped up. And what? No, I don't, she never mentioned. She looked genuinely shocked. Either she was a hell of an actress, or she really didn't know the extent of what Vanessa was doing. Where is Vanessa when you're at my house? I asked. Olivia wiped her eyes. With a man. She didn't tell me much about him, but I know his name. What is it? She looked at me, her expression miserable. Preston Whitmore. 3 days after meeting Olivia, I drove back to Clay Street. I couldn't move forward without understanding how two sisters, identical in every way, had ended up living such different lives. This time, a different woman answered the door. Older, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that had seen decades of hard work. She wore a faded floral dress and held a dish towel in her hands. My name is Harold Mitchell, I said. I spoke with Olivia a few days ago. Are you Ruth? Her expression softened. Olivia mentioned you might come back. Please come in. The house smelled like chamomile tea and old wood. Ruth led me to the small living room. In daylight, the space looked even more modest, threadbare couch, a bookshelf sagging under medical textbooks, framed photos everywhere. Most showed a dark-haired little girl growing up. Olivia, Ruth gestured for me to sit. You want to know about the twins? Yes. She took a breath, her gaze drifting to a photo of two infant girls in matching pink blankets, held by a young couple who looked barely out of their teens. But 33 years ago, those babies were 2 years old when their parents lost their lives in a car accident, hit by a drunk driver on Route 50. The mother was a waitress, the father a day laborer. They didn't have much, but they loved those girls. What happened after social services got involved? I was working as a nurse at Anne Arundel Medical Center then. My husband Howard and I wanted to take both girls, but we couldn't afford it. We were barely scraping by. Her hands twisted the dish towel. A family named Caldwell stepped forward, Thomas and Patricia. He owned an accounting firm, she was a teacher. Middle-class, stable. They wanted to adopt one of the twins. They chose Vanessa. Yes. Social services thought it was best. One girl would have a comfortable life with the Caldwells. The other, Olivia, would stay with us. They said it was better than putting both girls in the system. Ruth's eyes glistened. I loved that little girl from the first moment. We made it official when she was 5. In every way that mattered, she was ours. And Vanessa. The Caldwells were good to her. Music lessons, private school, college. But they moved to Delaware when she was 10 and we lost touch. Ruth shook her head. The girls found each other 6 months ago. Vanessa reached out through social media. They met for coffee, and Vanessa cried when she saw her sister for the first time in 30 years. Olivia told me she dropped out of college. Ruth nodded, sadness washing over her face. She was 19, studying bookkeeping at community college. Had a scholarship. But Howard got sick, lung problems from 30 years in that factory. And I started having heart issues. The medical bills piled up. Olivia came home one weekend and never went back. She said we needed her more than she needed a degree. Her voice broke. She's been taking care of us ever since. From the back of the house, I heard a wet, rattling cough. Ruth stood. That's Howard. Excuse me. I followed her to a small bedroom where Howard Bradshaw lay in a hospital bed, an oxygen concentrator humming beside him. He looked thin, almost skeletal, his skin the color of old paper. Howard's eyes turned toward me. Who's that? This is Harold Mitchell, Ruth said gently. Olivia's friend. Olivia is the best thing that ever happened to us. She thought, another cough, wet and painful. Don't let anything happen to her. I won't, I said and meant it. Ruth walked me back to the living room. The doctors say he has maybe 6 months. That's why when Vanessa offered to pay Olivia for those substitutions, Olivia said yes. She was desperate. We were desperate. She looked at me firmly, but Olivia didn't know what Vanessa was really doing. I know, I said, and I'm going to help you when this is all over. Ruth nodded, tears in her eyes. That afternoon, I met Vernon at City Dock Coffee. He took one look at my face and pushed his coffee toward me. You need a private investigator, I said. Vernon pulled out his phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, a man in his mid-40s walked up, broad-shouldered, graying hair, alert eyes. Rick Morrison, Vernon said. Retired Baltimore PD, best investigator I know. Morrison sat down. Vernon says you need someone looked into. I slid a napkin across the table with a name written in block letters, Preston Whitmore. I need to know everything about this man. Morrison looked at the name, when this related to something illegal. Yes. Give me a week. 7 days later, Morrison called. I met him at his office above a hardware store in Eastport. He opened a thick folder and pulled out a driver's license photo, handsome man, late 40s, dark hair, graying at the temples. Preston Whitmore doesn't exist, Morrison said. Real name Derek Allen Hayes, age 51. From Richmond, Virginia. Professional con artist specializing in romance fraud. My stomach dropped. He's been active for at least 8 years. Targets married women, convinces them to steal from their families, then disappears with the money. Morrison tapped a sheet covered in names. 8 confirmed victims across Virginia, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. Total losses $2.1 million. $2.1 million. He uses different names. Preston Whitmore, Brandon Cole, Marcus Stevenson. Morrison pulled out photos Hayes with different women, always the same confident smile. He's currently dating at least 3 other women. Your daughter-in-law is just one mark among many. I stared at the photos, rage building in my chest. He's wanted in Virginia for fraud and identity theft. Delaware issued a warrant last year. But he's slippery, moves around, uses cash, changes his appearance. Morrison closed the folder. If your daughter-in-law is involved with this guy, she's in serious danger. He's not going to leave her with anything. I picked up the folder, hands shaking. Thank you. Morrison walked me to the door. Be careful. Hayes is dangerous. Not violent, but he's ruined a lot of lives. I looked down at the folder, at the face of the man who'd been manipulating my daughter-in-law, stealing from my son. Vanessa's not just betraying Michael. She's being used by a monster. The night before the confrontation, I sat in my study with the door locked and the desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls. In front of me lay the leather notebook Margaret had given me for our 30th anniversary, now filled with 10 days' worth of observations, suspicions, and terrible truths. I read through it slowly, page by page, making sure I hadn't missed anything. Cameron's call, the shrimp salad, the missing jewelry, the twins standing side by side in that rundown house on Clay Street. Ruth's story about 2 babies separated 33 years ago. The forged loan documents. And Preston Whitmore, no Derek Allen Hayes, the monster who'd been pulling the strings all along. Tomorrow night, it would all come out. And I needed to be ready. I picked up my phone and started making calls. Cameron answered on the second ring. Dad. Everything okay? I need you home tomorrow. Can you get a flight from Miami? Tomorrow? I heard him moving, probably checking his schedule. Yeah, I can swap shifts with Anderson. What's going on? Family dinner, 6:30. It's important. There was a pause. This is about Vanessa, isn't it? About what I saw on the ship. Yes. I'll be there. Next, I called Vernon. He picked up immediately, like he'd been expecting me. It's time, he asked. Tomorrow night, 6:30. Can you come? Wouldn't miss it. You want me to bring Rick Morrison? Please, and tell him to bring everything he found on Derek Hayes. Will do. Harold. Yeah. You're doing the right thing. I hoped he was correct. The hardest call was to Olivia. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice tentative. Mr. Mitchell. Olivia, I need you to come to my house tomorrow evening. 6:30. I don't understand. Why? Because Vanessa needs to face what she's done. And you need to be there. You're part of this story whether you wanted to be or not. I softened my voice. I'm not angry with you, Olivia, but the truth has to come out, and it has to come out in front of everyone. She was quiet for a long moment. Will Michael be there? Yes. He's going to hate me. He's going to understand. I'll make sure of it. I paused. Olivia, you were manipulated just like the rest of us. Tomorrow night, we end this. Okay, she whispered. I'll be there. Finally, I called Michael. He was still at work. Of course he was. I could hear keyboards clicking in the background, the low hum of office conversation. Hey, Dad. What's up? I need you home tomorrow night, 6:30, family dinner. Dad, I've got this presentation on Monday. Michael, I used the tone I'd used when he was 16 and testing boundaries. This is important, more important than any presentation. You need to be here. No excuses. He was silent for a beat. Is something wrong? Is it Noah? Noah's fine. Everyone's fine. But we need to talk. All of us. Together. Okay. He sounded uncertain now. 6:30. I'll be there. Thank you, son. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. One more thing to arrange. I walked next door and knocked on Diane Morrison's door. She answered with a smile that faded when she saw my expression. Harold. What's wrong? Diane, I need a favor. A big one. Anything. Can Noah stay with you tomorrow night, maybe overnight? She studied my face. What's happening? Something that a 7-year-old boy doesn't need to see or hear. Please, Diane. I need to know he's safe and away from the house. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Of course. Bring him over around 6. We'll make popcorn and watch that superhero movie he's been talking about. Thank you. Back in my study, I spread everything out on the desk like a prosecutor preparing for trial. The notebook with its daily entries. 6 months of bank statements showing the cash withdrawals. The letter about the forged loan. The empty jewelry box, I'd kept it as evidence. The folder from Detective Morrison thick with photos and documentation of Derek Hayes' criminal history. I picked up a photo of Preston Whitmore Derek Hayes smiling confidently at the camera, his arm around a woman who wasn't Vanessa. One of his other victims, probably. Looking at his face made my hands shake with rage. This man had wormed his way into my family. Had convinced my daughter-in-law to betray her husband, steal from her son, commit fraud, and for what money he'd planned to take for himself all along. Tomorrow he wouldn't be there. But Vanessa would. And she'd have to face what she'd done. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out an old photo album. Found the picture I was looking for Margaret and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful, and convinced we could handle anything life threw at us. On the back, in her neat handwriting, she'd written something I'd forgotten until now. Always protect this family, Harold. No matter the cost. Love, M. I traced the words with my finger. I'm trying, Margaret, I whispered to the empty room. God knows I'm trying. I thought about tomorrow, about Michael's face when he learned the truth, about Noah, who'd grow up knowing his mother had betrayed them all, about Olivia who'd been desperate enough to help orchestrate this mess, about Vanessa who'd thrown away a good marriage for a con artist's empty promises. And I thought about Cameron and Vernon and Detective Morrison all coming to stand with me, because that's what family and friends did. They showed up when it mattered. I closed the album and stood, gathered all the evidence into a single stack and placed it in a folder. Tomorrow at 6:30, I'd lay it all out on the dining room table. No more secrets. No more lies. Just the truth, painful as it would be. I picked up the framed photo from my desk, all of us together last Christmas. Michael, Vanessa, Noah, Cameron, and me. We'd looked happy. We'd looked like a family. Tomorrow we'd find out if we still were. I set the photo down gently and turned off the desk lamp. Tomorrow the truth comes out. The evening arrived cool and clear. I'd spent the afternoon setting up the dining room like a courtroom, chairs arranged around the table, documents stacked neatly at my place at the head. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be ready. At 6 o'clock, I walked Noah next door to Diane Morrison's house. He was excited about the sleepover, chattering about the superhero movie they were going to watch. He didn't notice the tension in my shoulders or the way my hands shook when I hugged him goodbye. "I be good for Mrs. Morrison," I said. "I will, Grandpa." He ran inside, already asking Diane if they had popcorn. Diane met my eyes over his head. "He'll be fine. You do what you need to do." I nodded and walked back to 247 Prince George Street. By 6:15, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Michael arrived first. His Audi pulled into the driveway at exactly 6:17, and he came through the front door, still wearing his work clothes, slacks, button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, his Chesapeake Digital Systems badge still clipped to his belt. "Dad." He looked around the living room, noting the formal setup of the dining room visible through the doorway. "What's going on? Where's Noah?" "Noah's at Diane's for the night." His face shifted from confusion to concern. "Why, Dad, you're scaring me. What's this about?" Before I could answer, I heard a car door slam outside. Cameron, my younger son, came through the door carrying an overnight bag still in his cruise line uniform white shirt, with captain's epaulets, dark pants, his face tanned from months at sea. He dropped the bag and crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me into a tight hug. "I'm here, Dad." Michael looked between us. "Samtritin. What are you doing here? I thought you were in the Caribbean." Swapped shifts. Cameron released me and turned to his brother. "Dad called. Said it was important." "Important." Michael's voice rose slightly. "What the hell is going on?" "Sit down, son," I said quietly. "Everyone will be here soon, and then I'll explain everything. Chakter to everyone who's everyone." As if on cue, Vernon Nash's truck pulled up outside. He came in without knocking the way he'd done for 40 years and gave me a solemn nod. He took a seat in the corner of the living room. Hands folded in his lap, his engineer's mind already processing the scene. Michael looked at Vernon, then at me. "Dad." The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Detective Rick Morrison on the porch, a thick accordion folder tucked under his arm. He was dressed in a blazer and jeans, his detective's badge visible on his belt, even though he'd been retired for 3 years. "Mr. Mitchell." He shook my hand. "Thank you for coming." He stepped inside, his eyes sweeping the room with professional assessment, and took a seat near the door. He set the folder on his lap and waited. Michael was staring at Morrison now, his face pale. "Is that a detective, Dad? What the hell is happening? Is someone in trouble?" "Michael, please, just wait." At 6:25, the doorbell rang again. I opened it and found Olivia Caldwell standing on my porch. She wore a simple gray cardigan over a plain dress, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying, and her hands twisted together nervously. "Mr. Mitchell," she whispered. "I almost didn't come." "I'm glad you did. Come in." She stepped inside hesitantly, like she was walking into a lion's den. Michael had been pouring himself a glass of water in the kitchen. The glass slipped from his hands and shattered on the floor. "Vanessa." He stared at Olivia, his face a mask of confusion. She looked exactly like his wife, same height, same build, same face, but she was dressed differently, held herself differently, and there was something softer in her expression. Olivia started, but Michael wasn't listening. He turned toward the living room, and that's when he saw her. Vanessa. His real wife stood near the fireplace, wearing dark jeans and a burgundy sweater. She'd been there the whole time, watching from the shadows of the living room while I'd answered the door. Now she stepped forward into the light. Her face pale, her hands clenched at her sides. Michael looked from Olivia to Vanessa. Back to Olivia. Back to Vanessa. "What?" His voice cracked. "What the hell is this?" Cameron moved to his brother's side, one hand on Michael's shoulder. Mike, just breathe. There's two of them. Michael's voice was rising, panic creeping in. There's two Vanessas. Dad, what's happening? Am I losing my mind? You're not losing your mind, I said gently. Sit down. Please. Michael looked like he might refuse, but Cameron guided him to a chair at the dining room table. Cameron sat beside him, and Vernon moved from the corner to take a seat on Michael's other side. Morrison stayed near the door folder, still on his lap. Olivia took a seat at the far end of the table, as far from everyone as she could get. Vanessa remained standing by the fireplace, her arms wrapped around herself. Vanessa, I said. Sit down. She didn't move for a long moment. Then slowly she walked to the table and sat across from Michael. She wouldn't meet his eyes. The clock on the mantel read 6:28. Everyone was here. Everyone except Noah, safe at Diane's house, and Preston Whitmore, Derek Hayes, who had no idea what was about to happen. I looked around the table, at Michael still staring at the two identical women in disbelief, at Cameron, jaw set ready to support his brother through whatever came next, at Vernon, calm and steady as always, at Detective Morrison, professional and prepared, at Olivia, terrified and small in her chair, at Vanessa, whose face had gone from pale to gray. This was my family. Broken, maybe. Betrayed, certainly. But still my family. I stood at the head of the table, my hands resting on the stack of documents I'd prepared. The notebook, the bank statements, the loan papers, the jewelry box, the folder about Derek Hayes, the evidence of everything that had been stolen from us. Michael looked up at me, his eyes desperate. Dad, please, tell me what's going on. I took a deep breath and met his gaze. Thank you all for coming. Tonight we talk about truth. The clock struck 6:30. I stood at the head of the table, my hand resting on the leather notebook. The room was silent except for the ticking of the mantel clock and Michael's ragged breathing. 10 days ago, Cameron called me from Miami. He told me he'd seen Vanessa boarding his ship, but Vanessa was also here at the same time. I watched and noticed things, the way she cleaned, how she ate shrimp without an allergic reaction, how neighbors said she'd changed. Then I discovered Margaret's jewelry was missing, $65,000 worth, so I followed her. I pointed to Olivia, who sat with her head bowed, hands clenched in her lap. This is Olivia Caldwell, Vanessa's twin sister. The silence was suffocating. Then Michael exploded out of his chair. What, Dad? That's impossible. Vanessa doesn't have a sister. Sit down, Michael. No, this is insane. You're telling me my wife has a twin I never knew about, that she's been switching places. Cameron stood and put his hand on Michael's shoulder. Mike, look at them. Really look. Michael turned his eyes, moving from Vanessa to Olivia and back. I watched realization dawn as he took in the identical features, same height, same build. The only difference was their clothes and expressions, Vanessa rigid and defensive, Olivia small and terrified. No, Michael whispered. This can't be real. It's real, I said. Cameron, show him. Cameron pulled out his phone and showed photos, a woman in a white sundress on the ship's deck, a passport being scanned at the boarding gate. MS Ocean Majesty, 10 days ago. Boarding gate C-Suite 1204. I processed her check-in myself, Mike. I saw her passport with Vanessa's name. Later, I saw her on deck 7 with a man. Michael took the phone with shaking hands. But she was here. She made breakfast for Noah. He looked at me. You saw her that morning. I saw someone who looked like Vanessa, I said. But it wasn't her. It was Olivia. Michael turned slowly toward Olivia. Is this true? Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Michael. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I didn't even know you existed until 6 months ago. Answer the question, did you pretend to be my wife? Yes. The word came out as a sob. Vanessa contacted me 6 months ago. We'd been separated as babies. I didn't know I had a twin until she found me through social media. She told me about her life and asked for help. She said she needed time away, that life felt overwhelming. She offered to pay me $1,200 each time I stayed at your house and pretended to be her. Michael's face went white. $1,200. My foster parents are very ill. Medical bills are $5,800 a month. I work part-time as a bookkeeper, but it's not enough. I was desperate. Olivia pressed her hands over her face. When Vanessa offered to pay me, I said yes. I thought I was just giving her a break. I didn't know she was lying to everyone. I didn't know about you, about Noah. How could you not know? You were in my house. You saw my son. Horror dawned on his face. How many times did you pretend to be his mother? Maybe 20 times 30. Olivia was crying openly. Only when you were traveling. Vanessa would call the night before and tell me you'd be gone for a few days. I'd come after you left for the airport and stay until the night before you came home. Then I'd leave and Vanessa would come back. Michael turned to Vanessa. Is that true? You had her come when I was gone for work. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. Answer me. Michael slammed his hand on the table. Did you do this? Vanessa lifted her head, eyes hard. Yes. The word fell like a stone. Michael staggered. Cameron caught his arm. Why? Michael's voice broke. Why would you do this? I loved you. We have a son. Why? Because I was suffocating. Vanessa's voice cracked. Do you know what it's like being stuck in this house with your father while you're off building your career? You were never home, Michael. Never. Always in Arlington or Baltimore working 12-hour days. I was alone. I was lonely. So you paid someone to replace you. Michael's voice was quiet, now deadly. You abandoned our son so you could... His face changed. The man Cameron saw you with on the ship. Who was he? Vanessa looked away. Who was he? The room held its breath. I stepped forward. His name is Preston Whitmore, or that's what he told Vanessa. I looked at my son, saw the devastation in his eyes. Michael, sit down. Please. There's more. More. Michael laughed hollow and broken. What more could there be? I met his eyes. The twin substitution was just the start. If that twin revelation just shocked you as much as it shocked me that night, type shocked below. I want to know you're still following along. Fair warning. The narrative ahead includes fictional details crafted for impact. If you'd rather not continue, now's your chance to step away. But trust me, the real breakdown is coming next. I reached under the table and pulled out the empty jewelry box. Set it down in front of Vanessa with a hollow thud. Vanessa, where is my late wife's jewelry? She stared at the box, but said nothing. I opened it, showing everyone the empty velvet lining. Margaret's engagement ring, 1.5-carat diamond set in white gold, worth $15,000. Gone. I looked up at Vanessa. The Akoya pearl necklace I gave her for our 25th anniversary. 18 inches of perfectly matched pearls. $25,000. Gone. My voice was steady, but my hands shook. My grandfather's Omega Seamaster watch. Solid gold, 1968. $12,000. Gone. and Margaret's diamond watch with the sapphires her mother gave her. 13,000. Also gone. Michael was doing the math in his head. But that's $65,000. Yes. I closed the empty box. All of it sold. All of it gone. Vanessa. Michael turned to his wife, his voice barely a whisper. Did you take Grandma's jewelry? Vanessa's face had gone gray, but she didn't answer. I pulled out the bank statements next, spreading them across the table. These are from your joint account. Over the past 18 months, there have been irregular cash withdrawals and transfers. 1,500 here, 2,000 there, always when Michael was traveling. I pointed to the highlighted totals. $95,000 withdrawn in small amounts, so no one would notice. Cameron leaned forward, staring at the numbers. Almost 100 grand. And that's not all. I pulled out the letter from the bank, the one that had been misfiled in Michael's paperwork. 3 months ago, someone took out a personal loan for $150,000 in Michael's name. Michael snatched the letter from my hands, reading it rapidly. His face went from white to red. This is impossible. I never applied for a loan. I don't need a loan. I know you didn't. I pulled out his old tax return and laid it next to the loan documents. Look at the signatures. Michael compared them, and I watched understanding dawn. This isn't my signature. The M is wrong, the angle. He looked up at Vanessa, and for the first time I saw real fury in my son's eyes. You forged my signature. Vanessa's hands were shaking now, clutching the edge of the table. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Michael's voice was deadly calm. You stole my grandmother's jewelry. You drained our savings. And you took out a $150,000 loan in my name without telling me. He stood slowly. $310,000. Vanessa, how could you do this? Vanessa's voice cracked. I needed what? Michael's control was slipping. Needed to steal from your own family, from your son's future. What the hell did you need $300,000 for? Detective Morrison stood pulling the thick folder from his lap. I can answer that. All eyes turned to him. Morrison opened the folder and pulled out a driver's license photo, sliding it across the table to Vanessa. The man you've been seeing, Preston Whitmore. Do you recognize him? Vanessa stared at the photo, her face crumbling. Yes, that's Preston. His real name is Derek Allen Hayes. Morrison pulled out more documents. Age 51, from Richmond, Virginia. He's a professional con artist who specializes in what's called romance fraud. He targets married women, builds relationships with them, convinces them to steal money from their families, and then disappears with everything they've taken. The room went silent. Over the past 8 years, he's defrauded at least 8 women that we know of. Total losses across all victims approximately $2.1 million. Morrison pulled out a sheet with mugshots and case files. He's wanted in Virginia for fraud and identity theft. Delaware issued a warrant last year. Pennsylvania is building a case. He uses multiple aliases, Preston Whitmore, Brandon Cole, Marcus Stevenson, and he's very, very good at what he does. Vanessa was shaking her head. No, you're wrong. Preston isn't, he wouldn't. Vernon Nash stood and pulled out his phone. He'd been silent this whole time, but now he swiped through photos and held the screen out to Vanessa. These were taken last month by the investigator we hired. The photos showed Preston Derek with 3 different women, at a restaurant with a blonde, walking hand in hand with a redhead, kissing a brunette outside a hotel. He's dating multiple women simultaneously, Vernon said quietly. You're not his only target, Vanessa. You're not even his only current target. He's running the same scam on at least 3 other women right now. Vanessa stared at the photos, her face crumbling. The money you stole, Morrison continued. Where is it now? Vanessa's voice was barely audible. I gave it to Preston. He said he was investing it for us, for our future together. He said once we had enough, we could leave. Start over somewhere new. The Cayman Islands. He showed me brochures. He said, her voice broke. He lied. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. The money's gone, Vanessa. He's already moved it offshore or spent it. You're never going to see it again. And once he has everything he can get from you, he'll disappear. That's what he does. That's what he's done to 8 other women before you. Michael sank back into his chair, his face in his hands. Cameron put an arm around his brother's shoulders. Olivia was crying silently in her corner. Vanessa stood suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Everyone looked at her. You don't understand, she said, her voice shaking. Preston loves me. He told me he promised. She looked around the table, desperately seeking someone who would believe her. You're all wrong. He loves me. He's not using me. We have plans, real plans. Vanessa, I said gently. He's a criminal. Everything he told you was a lie. No. She shook her head violently. You don't know him. You don't know what we have together. The denial in her voice was heartbreaking. Vanessa braced both hands on the edge of the table, knuckles bone white. Her face was pale under the chandelier, light breath coming in short gasps. She lifted her head and swept her gaze around the circle of faces closing in on her Michael, Cameron, Vernon, Detective, Morrison, Olivia. Then she opened her mouth, voice hoarse. You all think you know everything. I stood still at the head of the table, both hands resting on the brown leather notebook and the stack of papers. Said nothing. Let the silence do the work. Michael leaned forward in his chair, fists clenched on his knees. Cameron stood near the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight. Vernon sat back with his arms folded, eyes steady. Detective Morrison kept one hand on the file folder in front of him, ready. Olivia had her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking. Vanessa straightened, and something shifted in her expression, desperation giving way to defiance. Fine, she said, in voice rising. You want the truth? Here it is. She looked straight at me, then at Michael. Yes, I took the money. Yes, Preston and I were planning to leave the country. We had it all worked out, a new life in the Cayman Islands. Michael's face went white. Cameron's jaw dropped. Vernon didn't move, but I saw his eyes narrow. Vanessa kept going, words tumbling out now fast and bitter. Preston found us a villa, oceanfront, 3 bedrooms, private beach. He showed me the photos, white sand, turquoise water, palm trees. He said we'd have a yacht. We'd sail the Caribbean. No more pretending, no more sneaking around. No more living in a house that smells like someone else's dead mother. I felt the words like a slap. Margaret's perfume bottles were still in the upstairs bathroom. Her apron still hung on a hook in the kitchen. Michael stood, chair scraping hard against the floor. Stop, he said, voice shaking. Girl, just stop. But Vanessa didn't stop. She turned on him, eyes blazing. Do you have any idea what it's like? She shouted. To be the poor adopted girl who married into a middle-class IT family. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 other foster kids. I wore hand-me-down clothes. I ate food bank dinners. And then I married you. A man who works 60 hours a week in Arlington and Baltimore, comes home exhausted, barely looks at his own son, and thinks a Saturday morning pancake breakfast makes him father of the year. Michael flinched. I saw the hit land. Preston promised me the life I deserve. Vanessa continued, voice cracking. He said I was beautiful. He said I was worth more than this, more than a Victorian house in Annapolis with peeling paint and a mortgage. He said we'd live like we mattered. Cameron stepped forward, blocking the doorway. Where's the money, Vanessa? She turned to him, and for a moment I thought she might cry. But instead she laughed, a short, bitter sound. It's with Preston, she said. Safe. You'll never see it again. Cameron's face went red. He took another step forward. Vernon stood quickly, putting a hand on Cameron's shoulder. Easy, son, Vernon said quietly. Michael was still standing, staring at Vanessa like he'd never seen her before. $300,000, he said, voice hollow. You stole $300,000 from my family, from my father, from my son's inheritance. Vanessa's defiance wavered. She looked down at the table. I didn't, she started. You sold my mother's engagement ring, Michael said, voice rising. The ring my father gave her 47 years ago. You forged my signature on a loan. You drained our savings. You lied to me, to Noah, to everyone. I had no choice, Vanessa shouted back. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to sneak around, pay my sister to cover for me, steal jewelry? I was trapped. Michael. Trapped in a marriage that felt like a prison sentence. She swung around to face Olivia, who was still crying softly in her chair. And you, Vanessa hissed. You were supposed to keep your mouth shut. You were supposed to take the money and stay silent. But no, you had to go and confess everything. You ruined it all. Olivia looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Vanessa, she whispered. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I thought I was helping you. I thought you just needed a few hours away. I didn't know you were stealing. I didn't know about Preston, or the money, or... Of course you didn't know, Vanessa snapped. Because you're a naive fool who thinks everyone's as honest as you are. I stepped forward. Oh, that's enough, I said, voice low. Vanessa whirled on me. Enough? You think this is enough, Harold? You dragged me here, humiliated me in front of everyone, exposed every mistake I've ever made, and now you want me to sit quietly and take it. You made your choices, I said. Now you live with them. For a long moment, nobody moved. The clock on the mantel ticked. Outside, a car drove past on Prince George Street, headlights sweeping across the curtains. Then Vanessa grabbed her purse from the back of her chair. Fine, she said. I'm done. She turned and headed for the door. Cameron didn't move to stop her this time. Michael stood frozen, face gray. Vanessa paused at the threshold, one hand on the doorframe. She looked back over her shoulder. You'll regret this, she said quietly. All of you. Then she was gone. I heard the front door slam. Heard her heels on the porch steps. Heard the car door open, the engine start, a silver Toyota Camry, the one we'd bought her 3 years ago. The headlights flared in the window, swept across the living room wall. Then the taillights disappeared down Roe Boulevard, heading west toward Route 50, toward Baltimore. The house was silent. Michael stood in the middle of the room, staring at the empty doorway. His shoulders sagged. He took one step, then another, then his knees buckled, and he sank into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder. It's over, son, I said quietly. Finally over. The phone rang at 11 o'clock at night. I'd been half asleep since Saturday's confrontation. The house was too quiet, Michael upstairs with Noah Cameron back on his ship, Vanessa gone. I grabbed the phone. Unknown number. Hello. Silence. Then a hoarse voice. Harold, I need help. Vanessa. I sat up, switched on the lamp. Where are you? Baltimore, a motel off Route 40. Her voice cracked. I didn't know who else to call. I pressed the phone to my ear. What happened? Traffic noise in the background. A long pause. Then the words came fast. I contacted Preston after I left. He told me to meet him at the Marriott downtown Inner Harbor. He said everything was ready. The villa, the bank account, new passports. He walked me through transferring the money into a joint offshore account. Almost $300,000, Harold. Everything I had left. My hand tightened on the phone. This morning I woke up and he was gone. She continued, voice breaking. Hotel room empty. His bags, phone, everything gone. I checked the account and it was cleaned out. Zero. I tried calling and the numbers disconnected. He took everything. I heard her crying, quiet, broken. He used me exactly the way I used Michael, she whispered. And now I have nothing. No money, no Preston, no plan. I'm in a $20 motel with $40 and nowhere to go. I walked to the window, looked out at the dark street. Come back, Vanessa. I can't. Michael hates me. You all... We'll call the FBI, I interrupted. Preston Derek Hayes, he's wanted. If you cooperate, help them catch him, they'll reduce your charges. But you have to do this right. Long silence. Okay, she said quietly. Good. Call me when you're close. I hung up. Across the hall, Michael stood in his doorway, arms crossed. She's coming back. 2 days, I said, and we're calling the FBI. Thursday afternoon, Vanessa pulled up in front of the house. She looked terrible, dark circles, wrinkled clothes, hair, and a messy ponytail. I met her at the door, nodded toward the living room. My agent's already here. FBI Special Agent Sarah Brooks sat on the couch, late 30s, short brown hair, sharp eyes, dark blazer. She stood, extended her hand. Ms. Caldwell, Agent Brooks, Economic Crimes Unit. Thank you for coming. Vanessa sat. I took the armchair. Michael had taken Noah to Diane's again. Brooks opened her portfolio. Let me be direct. You're facing federal charges, fraud, theft, forgery. Years in prison, hundreds of thousands in restitution. But if you cooperate fully, testify, provide records, help us catch Derek Hayes, we can work with the prosecutor. Reduced sentence, probation, maybe house arrest. You need to give us everything. Vanessa pulled a manila envelope from her purse. Wire transfer confirmations, hotel receipts, message screenshots, the account number he gave me. Everything. Brooks took it, flipped through, nodded. Good start. She laid 3 photos on the table, surveillance shots of Preston with different women. Derek Allen Hayes, 50 years old, 8 known victims, 2.1 million in losses. Warrants in Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, classic romance scammer targets. Women at charity events, builds trust, promises a future, drains accounts, disappears. He's done this 8 times that we know of. Vanessa stared at the photos, pale. 8 times. Could be more. He changes names, appearance stories. Same pattern every time. Brooks pulled out another photo, time-stamped 2 days ago. BWI Airport. Preston walking through security, carry-on bag, sunglasses. We've been tracking him. He made a mistake, used a credit card linked to an old alias. Bought a plane ticket. Vanessa leaned forward. Where? Brooks looked at her steadily. He booked a flight out of BWI tomorrow morning, 6:30. Destination Grand Cayman. The room went silent. Vanessa stared at the photo, jaw clenched, eyes wet. That was supposed to be our flight, she whispered. He said he loved me. Brooks closed the file, stood. He lied, just like he lied to 7 women before you. She tucked the file under her arm. But here's the good news, Miss Caldwell. She looked at Vanessa, then at me. We'll be waiting for him. 4 days after our meeting with the FBI, Michael and I sat in Agent Sarah Brooks's office at the Baltimore field office. Brooks opened a manila folder, pulled out a printout. Vanessa's cooperation has been invaluable, she said. Full documentation, wire transfers, hotel receipts, phone records. She gave us Preston's patterns, the aliases he uses, how he moves money. She slid the printout across the desk. Airline confirmation. Passenger name Preston J. Whitmore. Derek Allen Hayes booked a one-way ticket out of BWI, Brooks said. Tomorrow morning, 6:30, Grand Cayman. We're moving on him at the airport before he clears security. She looked at us. I'm inviting you both to be there as witnesses. You don't have to come, but I thought you might want to see this through. Michael looked at me. I nodded. We'll be there. The alarm went off at 4:30 the next morning. I'd barely slept, kept thinking about Margaret's empty jewelry box, the forged loan papers, Vanessa's voice. He took everything. Michael picked me up at 5. We drove in silence down Route 2 to I-97, then south toward BWI. The highway was nearly empty. The sky was still dark stars, fading. We met Agent Brooks at Terminal A departures at 5:30. She wore a navy windbreaker with FBI in yellow letters. 4 other agents stood nearby in plain clothes, earpieces, hands near their belts. He'll check in at Counter 12, Brooks said quietly. 6:15, American Airlines. We'll take him before security, clean and quick. She gestured to a seating area near the entrance. You two wait there. Don't approach, don't interfere. Just watch. Michael and I sat. The airport slowly woke up travelers with suitcases, families heading to counters, announcements overhead. I checked my watch. 6 o'clock. Michael sat forward, hands clasped between his knees. I keep thinking about Noah, he said quietly. How do I explain all this to him? One step at a time, I said. First we deal with this, then we figure out the rest. At 6:12, my phone buzzed. Text from Brooks inbound. 2 minutes. I looked up. Brooks stood near Counter 12, pretending to check her phone. The other agents were scattered, 1 by baggage drop, 2 by escalators, 1 near the entrance. Then I saw him. Preston Whitmore walked through the automatic doors at 6:15 exactly. Gray suit, expensive tailored. Louis Vuitton carry-on over his shoulder. Sunglasses, confident stride. 50 years old, but looked younger. He walked straight to Counter 12, set his bag on the scale, handed over his ID and ticket. Michael went rigid beside me. That's him, he whispered. Agent Brooks stepped forward. Excuse me, sir. Preston turned, smiling. Then he saw the FBI windbreaker, and his face changed just for a second, before the smile returned, forced. Can I help you? Brooks held up her badge. Derek Allen Hayes, FBI, you're under arrest. Preston's smile vanished. He stepped back. I think you have the wrong wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft, Brooks said flatly. No, don't move! Preston bolted. He dropped the bag and ran toward the emergency exit. But 2 agents were already moving. They cut him off in 5 steps, grabbed his arms, slammed him against a support column. One pulled his arms back, snapped handcuffs on. Preston shouted, voice echoing through the terminal. You have no right, I haven't done anything. Brooks walked over calmly, held up her phone bank records, wire transfers, Vanessa's signed statement. Derek Allen Hayes, she said again. Also known as Preston Whitmore, Ryan Caldwell, Marcus Bennett. 8 known victims over 5 years, $2.1 million in fraud. Outstanding warrants in Virginia, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. You're done. Preston stopped shouting, stared at her, breathing hard. The other agents were already searching his bag. One pulled out stacks of cash, $100 bills, rubber-banded. Another pulled out a laptop. A third held up a passport, fake, different name, Preston's photo. Brooks stepped back. How much? The agent counted quickly. 80,000. Brooks pulled out her phone, made a call. Listened, then nodded. Account still active. 140,000 sitting in it. He hadn't moved it yet. She looked at Preston. 220,000 total. That's about 71% of what you stole from Vanessa Caldwell alone. The other 90,000 you wired offshore, that's gone. But this, she gestured to the cash and laptop. This we're keeping. Preston didn't say anything, just stared at the floor. 2 agents led him toward the exit, hands cuffed behind his back. Gray suit, wrinkled sunglasses, gone. Travelers stared as they passed. Brooks walked over to us. That's it, she said quietly. He'll be arraigned this afternoon. Federal charges, 15 to 20 years. Michael stood watching Preston disappear through the doors. It's really over, Dad, he whispered. I put my hand on his shoulder. Yes, son, it's done. But even as I said it, I knew we still had a long road ahead. Vanessa's sentencing, Olivia's family, Noah's healing. The arrest was over. The rebuilding was just beginning. 2 weeks after Preston's arrest, Michael and I sat in the Anne Arundel County Circuit Court on Church Circle. The courtroom was old wood-paneled walls, high ceilings, rows of wooden benches. Vanessa sat up front, with her public defender shoulders hunched. Preston Derek Hayes sat 20 feet away in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, 2 federal marshals behind him. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s, gray hair, black robe. She opened a file. United States versus Derek Allen Hayes, also known as Preston Whitmore, Ryan Caldwell, Marcus Bennett. She looked at him over her reading glasses. Mr. Hayes, you've been found guilty on multiple counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and identity theft. 8 confirmed victims over 5 years, $2.1 million in losses. You've shown a pattern of deliberate, calculated deception, targeting vulnerable individuals. This court finds no grounds for leniency. She paused. I sentence you to 18 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. You are ordered to pay full restitution to your victims. Preston didn't react, just kept staring forward. The judge turned to the next file. Commonwealth of Maryland versus Vanessa Marie Caldwell. Vanessa stood, legs shaking. Her lawyer steadied her elbow. Ms. Caldwell, you've pleaded guilty to theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You stole over $300,000 from your family. However, the court recognizes your full cooperation with federal authorities. Your testimony was instrumental in the arrest and conviction of Derek Hayes. She closed the file. I sentence you to 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and restitution of $90,000 to the Mitchell family. You are prohibited from leaving the state and from contacting Noah Mitchell during probation. Violation will result in immediate incarceration. Vanessa buried her face in her hands. The judge looked at Michael. Mr. Mitchell, the divorce decree has been finalized. You are granted full custody of your son, Noah Mitchell. Michael nodded, face gray. We left 15 minutes later. A week after sentencing, I received a check from the FB with $220,000, the recovered funds from Preston's arrest. I sat at my desk that night staring at the check. Thought about Margaret's jewelry sold and gone forever. Thought about the 90,000 wired offshore unrecoverable. But mostly I thought about Olivia, desperate, manipulated by her own sister, paying for her parents' medical bills the only way she knew how. Margaret's voice in my head. Always protect this family, Harold. Family wasn't just blood. It was the people who stayed, who loved when it was hard. I pulled out my checkbook and wrote a check for $50,000. The next morning, I drove to Eastport. 89 Clay Street looked the same, gray-blue wood siding, faded curtains, wilted daisies. I climbed the porch steps and knocked. Ruth Anderson opened the door, 72, gray hair, old cardigan, tired eyes. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, surprised. "May I come in?" She stepped aside. The living room was small, tidy, second-hand furniture, crocheted blankets, a walker in the corner. I heard the hiss of an oxygen machine from the back bedroom. Olivia appeared in the hallway, stopped when she saw me. I pulled the check from my jacket pocket, held it out to Ruth. "This is for you and Howard. $50,000. It'll cover your medical bills and move Howard to a better care facility, one with full-time nurses, better equipment, more comfort." Ruth stared at the check. Her hands started shaking. "Mr. Mitchell, I can't. We can't." "You can," I said firmly. "Olivia was caught in the middle of this. She made mistakes, but she did it out of love for you. You and Howard gave her a home when no one else would. You deserve help." Ruth started crying. Olivia rushed over, put her arms around her. "Thank you," Olivia said, voice breaking. "Thank you so much." I set the check on the table. "Use it well." 1 month later, Howard Bradshaw moved into the Annapolis Care Center on Aris T. Allen Boulevard, a modern facility with private rooms, round-the-clock nursing, and a garden courtyard. Ruth visited every day. Olivia worked part-time at a local grocery store, spent her evenings with them. 4 months after that, Howard passed away peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was small, a local church on West Street, maybe 20 people. Ruth sat in the front pew, Olivia beside her, holding her hand. Laura Griffin sat on Olivia's other side. Michael and I sat in the back with Noah. After the service, I walked up to Olivia, put my hand on her shoulder. "Your father would be proud of you." Olivia looked up, eyes red. "He wasn't my father by blood," she whispered, "but he loved me like one. He and Ruth, they saved me." "I know," I said. "And now you're saving Ruth. That's what family does." She nodded, wiped her eyes. Outside, Ruth stood by the church steps, staring at the hearse. Olivia went to her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. They stood there together, holding each other up. Michael appeared beside me. "You did a good thing, Dad." I watched Olivia and Ruth walk slowly toward a waiting car. So Margaret would have done the same. I said. We walked back to our car. Noah climbed into the back seat, asked if we could stop for ice cream. Michael said yes. I started the engine and pulled onto West Street. The legal battles were over. The sentences handed down. The money divided as best it could be. Now came the harder part. Healing. Moving forward. Helping Noah understand. But that I thought was a challenge for another day. The hardest part was explaining it to Noah. 3 weeks after the sentencing, Michael and I sat down with him in the living room. 7 years old, too young to understand fraud or theft or betrayal, but old enough to know his mother was gone and something was very wrong. I'd been dreading this conversation since the night Vanessa walked out. How do you tell a child that his mother chose money over him, that she lied, stole, ran away with another man? You don't. You protect him. You tell him the truth in pieces he can hold without breaking. Michael sat on the couch, Noah on his lap. I sat in the armchair across from them. The late afternoon sun came through the window, dust motes drifting in the light. Noah, I said gently, You know sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, right? He nodded, big brown eyes, serious. Well, your mom made some very big mistakes, I continued. She did some things that hurt our family, and because of that, she won't be living with us anymore. Noah's face crumpled. His chin started trembling. Did I do something wrong, Grandpa? He whispered. Michael pulled him closer, kissed the top of his head. No, buddy, Michael said, voice thick. You didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. Dad and Grandpa love you so much. This is about choices your mom made, not about you. But where is she? Noah asked, tears spilling over. Why doesn't she come home? I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. She can't come home right now, I said. She has to. She has to fix the mistakes she made. And that's going to take a long time. Noah cried quietly for a minute, face buried in Michael's chest. Michael looked at me over Noah's head, eyes red. I cleared my throat. Noah, do you remember the nice lady who came to visit a few times? The one who looked like Mom? Noah lifted his head, wiped his nose on his sleeve. The lady who made cookies, he said. That's right. Her name is Olivia. She's your mom's sister, your aunt. She didn't know about the mistakes your mom was making. She was trying to help. And she'd like to keep visiting us if that's okay with you. Noah looked uncertain. Will Miss Olivia stay? He asked quietly. Before I could answer, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Olivia appeared in the doorway holding a plate covered with aluminum foil. She'd been waiting in the kitchen, giving us time to talk first. Hi, Noah, she said softly. I brought your favorite chocolate chip cookies, just out of the oven. She walked over, slowly set the plate on the coffee table, pulled back the foil. The smell of warm chocolate filled the room. Noah stared at her, then at Michael, then back at her. Olivia crouched down so she was at his eye level. I know I look like your mom, she said gently. That must be confusing. But I'm not her. I'm your Aunt Olivia. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to be your friend. Noah didn't say anything, just kept staring. Olivia smiled, sad but hopeful. How about we have some cookies and milk, she said. And maybe you can tell me about school. She sat down on the floor, cross-legged, and took a cookie from the plate. Noah watched her for a long moment. Then slowly he climbed off Michael's lap and sat on the floor across from her. Took a cookie, bit into it. I'm in second grade, he said quietly. Olivia's smile widened. Second grade, that's a big deal. What's your teacher's name? Mrs. Patterson. Is she nice? Noah nodded, and just like that, the conversation started. The first week was hard. Noah would see Olivia and startle, eyes going wide, body going rigid. A couple of times he ran to his room crying, and Michael or I would have to go sit with him, remind him that Olivia wasn't Vanessa, that she was safe, that she wasn't going anywhere. Olivia was patient, didn't push, gave him space when he needed it. Came by twice a week, Tuesday afternoons and Saturday mornings, and always brought something: cookies, a new coloring book, a picture book from the library. By the second week, Noah stopped running. By the third week, he started calling her Aunt Liv. One Saturday morning, Olivia took him to Quiet Waters Park. They fed the ducks, played on the swings, walked the nature trail. When they came back, Noah was laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. Aunt Liv does funny voices when she reads, he announced at dinner that night. She made the wild things sound like pirates. Michael looked at me across the table, relief written all over his face. 2 months after our first conversation, Noah's teacher stopped me at pickup. Mr. Mitchell, she said, smiling. I wanted to show you something Noah made today. She handed me a piece of construction paper. crayon drawing 4 stick figures standing in front of a house. Blue sky, yellow sun, green grass. Each figure had a label in Noah's careful printing: Grandpa Harold, Dad, me, Aunt Liv. I stared at the drawing, throat tight. He talked about his Aunt Olivia all through art time, Mrs. Patterson said. Said she makes the best chocolate chip cookies in the whole world. I folded the drawing carefully, slipped it into my jacket pocket. Thank you, I managed. That night I showed it to Michael. He stared at it for a long time, then put it on the refrigerator with a magnet right next to Noah's school photos and a drawing of a boat Cameron had sent from Miami. Margaret would have been proud. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday evening, Olivia was reading to Noah in his bedroom. I was downstairs washing dishes, heard their voices drifting down the hallway, Olivia doing silly accents, Noah giggling. Then it got quiet. I dried my hands, walked upstairs, stood in the doorway. Noah was sitting on his bed in his dinosaur pajamas, where the wild things are open on his lap. Olivia sat beside him. He looked up at her, serious. Aunt Liv, he said quietly. Yeah, sweetheart. Will you read me a bedtime story every time you come over? Olivia's eyes filled with tears. She blinked fast, smiled. Of course, she whispered. Every single time. Noah wrapped his arms around her neck, hugged her tight. Olivia closed her eyes, hugged him back. I stepped away from the door, left them alone, walked downstairs to the kitchen where Michael was making tea. He's going to be okay, I said. Michael looked up. Yeah, he said quietly. I think he is. We stood there in the kitchen, father and son, listening to Olivia's voice upstairs, reading about wild things and faraway places, and a boy who sailed home to where someone loved him best of all. And for the first time in months, the house felt like home again. 6 months after the sentencing, life began to find a new rhythm. It wasn't the same as before, couldn't be. Margaret was still gone 12 years now. Vanessa was serving probation in California, no contact allowed with Noah. Howard had passed away peacefully, but the house felt different. Lighter somehow, like we'd carried something heavy for so long that we'd forgotten what it felt like to put it down. Michael was healing. Slowly, but healing. Every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, Michael drove to an office building on West Street for therapy. He'd started going 2 weeks after the sentencing. At first he'd been reluctant, said he didn't need to talk to a stranger about his problems. But I'd pushed, and he'd gone. One evening, about 3 months in, we were sitting on the back porch after Noah had gone to bed. Michael nursed a beer, stared at the darkening sky. Dad, he said quietly, I don't know if I'll ever remarry. The idea of trusting someone again, letting someone into my life, into Noah's life, it terrifies me. He took a sip. But I'm learning. In therapy, I'm learning that what happened wasn't my fault. That trust can be rebuilt even if it takes years. I put my hand on his shoulder. Margaret always said healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to carry the weight differently. Michael nodded, smiled a little. Yeah, that sounds like Mom. In May, Michael got promoted to Chief Technology Officer at Chesapeake Digital Systems. He came home that evening with a bottle of champagne and a grin I hadn't seen in over a year. Noah ran to him at the door, and Michael scooped him up, spun him around. Guess what, buddy? Dad got a promotion. I opened the champagne. We toasted with Noah using apple juice. Michael told us about the new role leading the entire tech team, bigger projects, better salary, financial stability finally after months of legal fees and restitution payments. I'm proud of you, son, I said. More than the promotion, though I was proud of the time he was spending with Noah. Saturday mornings became soccer practice at the elementary school field. Michael coaching from the sidelines, Noah running drills with a dozen other 7-year-olds. Afterwards, They'd stop at Main Street Bakery for cinnamon rolls and come home smelling like sugar and grass stains. Tuesday evenings were homework time. Michael patient at the kitchen table helping Noah with spelling words and addition problems. Never raising his voice. Just saying, "Let's try it a different way, buddy." And Sunday afternoons, they'd go fishing at Quiet Waters Park. Came back with stories about the one that got away. Once Noah actually caught a small bass. Michael took a photo, sent it to Cameron. Noah kept it on his nightstand for weeks. One Saturday morning, I watched from the kitchen window as Michael taught Noah to throw a football in the backyard. Michael demonstrating the grip, the spiral. Noah's throws wobbling, then getting better. Michael cheering every time. I thought about Margaret. Wished she could see this. Olivia had found her own rhythm too. She still lived at 89 Clay Street with Ruth in the little gray-blue house in Eastport. After Howard passed away, Ruth had struggled with grief and loneliness. But Olivia had been there steady. She'd taken a part-time accounting job, working remotely for local businesses. It wasn't much, but it covered bills and let her be home with Ruth. Twice a week, she came to visit us. Tuesday evenings, she'd arrive around 5:30 with groceries and cook dinner. She and Noah would set the table together. Noah chattering about school, Olivia listening like every word mattered. After dinner, she'd help Noah with his reading homework, while Michael and I cleaned up. Saturday mornings, she'd come over for coffee. She and I would sit on the front porch, talk about Ruth's health, Noah's progress, Michael's work. Easy conversations, comfortable. And somehow, without anyone planning it, she and Michael had become friends. Real friends. The kind who could talk about hard things without it being awkward. Michael would ask about Ruth, Olivia would ask about work. They'd joke about Noah's latest obsession, currently dinosaurs. They'd sit at opposite ends of the couch while Noah watched cartoons between them. There was warmth there and trust, but not romance. Both of them seemed to understand, without saying it, that crossing that line would complicate everything. Olivia was Aunt Liv, Noah's safe person, Ruth's caretaker part of the family, and that was enough. Michael said it best one evening after Olivia had left. "She's a good person, Dad. I'm glad she's in our lives." "So am I," said. Cameron called every Sunday evening. He was still captain of the MS Ocean Majesty, still sailing the Caribbean, but he never missed a call. 6 o'clock, my phone would ring, and Noah would scramble to answer it on video. "Uncle Cameron," he'd shout. Cameron would wave from some tropical port, tell Noah about dolphins or storms or the time a passenger left a parrot in their cabin. Noah would show Cameron his latest drawing or Lego creation. Cameron would ooh and ah, like it was the most impressive thing he'd ever seen. "Your brother's living the adventure," Michael joked once. "We're living the stability." "Both are good," I said. "Different, but good." As for me, I found peace in small things. Margaret's garden. I tended it every morning, the purple irises she'd loved, the rose bushes, the tomato plants. One evening, Noah asked if he could help. We knelt in the dirt together, planted new tomatoes, and I told him about Grandma Margaret. How she'd loved gardening. How she'd believed that growing things was a kind of hope. "Do you miss her, Grandpa?" Noah asked. "Every day," I said. "But I see her in you, in your dad, in this garden." Noah nodded seriously. Patted the dirt around the seedling with his small hands. I also spent evenings on the porch, reading or just watching the street, thinking about everything we'd survived. The lies, the theft, the betrayal, the arrests, the sentencing, the grief. And somehow, here we were, still standing, still a family. One evening in late summer, I sat on the front porch as the sun went down. The air was warm, cicadas humming in the trees. Michael and Noah were in the yard playing tag. Noah shrieking with laughter, Michael pretending he couldn't catch him. The screen door opened behind me. Olivia stepped out carrying a tray with 2 glasses of iced tea. She handed me one, sat in the rocking chair beside mine. "Beautiful evening, isn't it, Harold?" she said. I took the glass, smiled. "It really is, Olivia," I said. "It really is." We sat in silence, sipping tea, watching Michael finally catch Noah and lift him into the air. The boy's laughter rang across the yard like a bell. And I thought, this is what we fought for. 1 year had passed since that November morning, when Cameron called and said, "Dad, Vanessa's on my ship." I sat in my study on a quiet afternoon, the same leather notebook open on my desk. I'd filled it over the past 12 months. Observations, questions, fears, small victories. Now I turned to the last page and wrote in careful letters, "Day 365, we made it through." I set down my pen and looked around the room. Margaret's photo still sat on the corner of my desk, her smile frozen in time. The window looked out over the backyard where the garden she'd loved was preparing for winter. And somewhere in the house I could hear Noah laughing. 1 year, 365 days since the impossible call. Since I'd stood between 2 identical women and realized my daughter-in-law had been living a double life. A lot had changed, but we were still standing. Noah was 8 now, 2nd grade at Annapolis Elementary. His teacher said he was doing well, reading above grade level, making friends, no longer asking why Mom didn't come home. He still had hard days, but fewer of them. And he had Aunt Liv, who showed up every Tuesday and Saturday like clockwork, who baked cookies and read stories, and never once made him feel like he was too much or not enough. Michael was stable, CTO at Chesapeake Digital Systems, leading a team of 20 developers earning enough to rebuild what Vanessa had stolen. He went to therapy every Wednesday. He took Noah fishing on Sundays. He hadn't started dating, said he wasn't ready, might not be for a long time, but he was healing. Learning to trust himself again. Learning that Vanessa's betrayal didn't define him. Olivia had become independent. Full-time accountant, now working for 3 local businesses, making enough to support herself and Ruth. She'd moved Ruth into a smaller, easier-to-manage apartment in Eastport, closer to medical care. And twice a week, she came to our house. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. Because somehow, without anyone planning it, she'd become family. Vanessa was in California serving out her probation, working at a grocery store, living in a studio apartment, forbidden from leaving the state or contacting Noah. She'd sent a letter 3 months ago, an apology addressed to Noah. Michael had shown it to me, asked what I thought. I told him to hold on to it. Maybe someday Noah would want to read it, but not yet. Not while he was still healing. Cameron was still at sea, still captain of the MS Ocean Majesty. He called every Sunday, sent postcards from Jamaica and Cozumel and Grand Cayman. He kept a photo in his cabin, all of us together, taken at Christmas. Michael, Noah, me, Olivia, Ruth. A new kind of family portrait. And me, I was 68 years old, 12 years a widower, still living in the house Margaret and I had bought 40 years ago. Still tending her garden. Still teaching Noah about what it means to be honest, to be kind, to stay when things get hard. I'd learned a lot this year. About truth and lies. About family and betrayal. About redemption and punishment. I used to think lies were simple, true or false, right or wrong. But this year taught me that lies live in shadows. They grow like weeds, slow and silent, strangling everything real. Vanessa's lies had nearly destroyed us. Not just the theft or the forgery, but the daily deception, the pretending, the manipulating, the using her own sister as a prop in her fantasy. But Olivia's truth had saved us. She'd confessed when she didn't have to, cooperated when it would have been easier to run. And in doing so, she'd given us a chance to rebuild on something solid. I used to think family was blood, shared DNA, legal documents, wedding vows. But this year taught me that family is who stays, who fights, who shows up when everything falls apart and says, "I'm here. I'm not leaving." Olivia wasn't related to us by blood or marriage, but she was family. She'd earned it not through some grand gesture, but through 100 small ones. Tuesday dinners, Saturday morning coffee, bedtime stories and soccer games and patient answers to Noah's endless questions. Vanessa, on the other hand, had been family by marriage and law. But she'd chosen money over us, chosen Preston over Michael, chosen lies over love, and in doing so, she'd become a stranger. I used to think punishment and redemption were opposites. Vanessa got 2 years probation. Preston got 18 years in federal prison. Justice served, case closed. But punishment doesn't equal healing, and justice doesn't erase pain. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something better from the ruins. Olivia found redemption by caring for Ruth, by loving Noah, by showing up every week with patience and cookies and second chances. Michael found it by going to therapy, by being present for his son, by choosing to trust again, even when it terrified him. And me, I found it by protecting this family. Not perfectly. God knows I made mistakes. But I'd done what Margaret would have wanted. I'd kept us together. I looked at Margaret's photo, traced the frame with one finger. "Margaret," I whispered. "If you're watching, I hope you're proud. We protected this family, not perfectly, not without scars, but we did it." Outside, the purple irises she'd planted were dormant, now waiting for spring. But they'd bloom again. They always did. "I see you in Noah's laugh," I continued. "In Michael's strength. In the way Olivia sits at our table like she belongs. You're still here. In all of this." I closed the notebook, stood slowly. My knees creaked, 68 years catching up with me. Walked to the window. In the backyard, Noah and Olivia were kneeling in the garden bed near the fence, planting tulip bulbs for spring. Noah's small hands patting the dirt, Olivia pointing to where the next one should go. He said something I couldn't hear, and she laughed, ruffled his hair. I watched them for a long moment. Thought about everything we'd survived. The lies, the theft, the betrayal, the arrests, the trials, the grief, the slow, hard work of healing. And I smiled. This is what family looks like. Not perfect, not without complications or history or scars, but real. Built on truth instead of lies, on choice instead of obligation, on love that stays even when it's hard. I thought about Vanessa sometimes, wondered if she regretted it, wondered if she understood what she'd lost. But mostly I thought about the people who were still here, the ones who'd stayed, the ones who'd fought, the ones who'd chosen us. Noah looked up, then saw me in the window and waved. Olivia waved, too, smiled, that warm, genuine smile. I waved back. This is enough, I thought. This is more than enough. If you've walked this journey with me, thank you. It hasn't been easy, but it's been real. What would you do if you discovered your daughter-in-law was living a double life? Would you confront her or stay silent? Would you protect your family or try to fix the unfixable? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story touched you, if it made you think about truth and family and what it means to rebuild after betrayal, please like and subscribe. The truth always finds its way to the light. Sometimes it takes longer than we'd like. Sometimes it costs more than we want to pay. But it's always worth it. Because in the end, the truth is all we have. And it's enough. Looking back on this journey, I realize family betrayal cuts deeper than any stranger's crime. When the person sleeping under your roof, eating at your table, raising your grandson, turns out to be living a double life, it shakes everything you thought you knew about trust. If you're facing something similar, here's my advice. Don't be like me and wait. I watched for 10 days, gathering evidence while my gut screamed the truth. Trust your instincts. Confront early. Protect the innocent, especially the children, first. The lessons I learned are hard ones. Family betrayal doesn't just steal money. It steals peace. It makes you question every memory, every smile, every "I love you." But here's what I also learned. Family isn't defined by blood or marriage certificates. It's defined by who stays when the truth comes out. Olivia wasn't family by law, but she became family through loyalty. Vanessa was family by marriage, but she became a stranger through lies. Grandpa stories like mine aren't meant to entertain, they're meant to warn. We older folks have seen betrayal before. We know the patterns, and we know that ignoring red flags doesn't make them disappear. It just gives them time to grow. That's why I share these grandpa stories, so younger generations can learn from our mistakes, not repeat them. My personal view, God gives us intuition for a reason. That morning when Cameron called and I felt my stomach drop, that was a gift. Not every warning is that clear, but when it comes, listen. The Lord doesn't promise us a life without pain, but He does promise strength to face it. As for grandpa stories and family betrayal, they'll keep happening as long as greed exists. But so will resilience, forgiveness, and second chances. Thank you for walking this road with me to the very end. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. What would you do if you found yourself in Harold's shoes, discovering your daughter-in-law's secret double life? I genuinely want to hear your perspective. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing so you won't miss what comes next. A gentle reminder, while inspired by real-world dynamics and social issues, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this content doesn't align with your preferences, feel free to explore other videos that suit you better. The truth always finds the light. Sometimes it just takes a grandfather's stubborn love to turn it on.